Morning. Good
Good morning. How are you
morning.
doing?
Smooth. Smooth
Awesome.
today. 8.5 hours sleep, so it's magical.
Yeah,
Like those are rare.
I'm very happy to hear that you're resting during this time.
Yeah, how are you?
Good, good. Up and down. Feeling a little bit sick today. I think it's normal, right? With
Well,
all of
it
this
depends. Is it
emotional.
is it an emotional sickness or is it a true infection that we need to be quarantining you for?
That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I have plenty of
Yeah.
questions for you.
As
So I
far as
wanted
I'm
to start
concerned, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to
Yeah.
start by giving an introduction of who you are. Maybe I'll let you introduce yourself because a lot of my people don't know you.
And how could they? I'm in Toronto and you're in Montreal for the most part, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so my name is Kaveh Kavoosi. I met Chrissy actually last year at a culture fest in Jamaica, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Really speaking to the heart. But I practice emergency medicine here in Toronto, Ontario, and if there's anyone across the world, Toronto, Ontario is in Canada. And it's been a big shift in how people are showing up into the ER as this thing unfolds. I have been seeing some cases that are positive and that have turned out to be positive, and I think we're just really early in this. So we have other countries that are have led as an example about what preparedness looks like and what it doesn't look like, and there's cultural differences, like people who are much closer, like the Italians, who unfortunately, that served as a vector because we are the vectors. So I'm just happy to be here today to just invite you guys into not only the health side of it, but also the human side of how we can really be making the most out of mitigating damage, but also making the most for ourselves and for the community, for this world.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So Kaveh is on the front lines. He's in the ER many times in the week, seeing cases, seeing what's really happening, how it's unfolding firsthand. And I kind of wanted to start with some rumors, or just to kind of put some rumors at ease on how the virus is transmitted. Some people are saying someone absolutely needs to cough on you. Other people are saying it's airborne. So how is this virus transmitted from one to another?
Well, as of now, the data shows over and over that we are the vectors. And we being the vectors, meaning you have to get it somehow from another human being expelling it. And then you either taking it with your hands after it's sat somewhere, or you breathing it in directly when it's airborne. So some studies have shown that it is airborne, meaning it does stay in the air for a little bit longer, but those tests were shown in a cylinder that they got someone to sneeze or cough in, and they saw that after 3 hours it was staying in place. That doesn't mean that it's only there for 3 hours. They stopped the testing at 3 hours.
Ah,
So not only that, but we have to think that this is a closed container, and if you're out in nature or you're not in a tight confined space, the air is going to disperse this, so it's very unlikely. But the most likely places for you to get a high vector, or a place where you're going to get direct contact, is if someone coughs or sneezes on you, or they cough and sneeze, it deposits itself somewhere on the ground, and then you take it and then you put it up. And as long as we're, for example, on our phone, we're deeply unconscious, and in our unconsciousness we touch our face so many thousand times a day, and
I'm
we're
guilty of
introducing
that.
ourselves. Yeah. And it's not just like little this, it's nose rubbing like this, so we're really pushing things into our own orifices. So we are the network, and by you breaking that network, we can, by us breaking the network, by doing the things that work like isolation, quarantining, using gloves if you are in grocery stores, not touching anything, washing stuff and leaving it outside, we can mitigate what viruses stay out there and away from us and what comes home.
Perfect. For those who are starting to log on again, we're on line with Dr. Kaveh Kavoosi, who is a frontline ER doctor, who's giving us some tips on how to be part of the solution. So we just discussed now how the virus is transmitted, how long it stays in the air. So it's been proven that it's about 3 hours is all that they've studied, but it can stay in the air longer. So we need
Yeah.
to be very vigilant in how we're using our stuff. The next thing that I wanted to ask you is, I've been hearing that we should be drinking a lot of liquids, because if the virus gets into our stomach, the bacteria in our stomach will kill it. Is this true?
This is where we start getting into the semantics of, like, as if the virus is a piece of a piece of like chicken that you want to just push down into your stomach. These viruses, if you think what a bacteria looks like, where most bacteria you have to look 30x what our normal eye can see for you to start seeing a point on a microscope. This bacteria can't even see a virus. That's how small viruses are. So when we're talking about microns of length, it's very unlikely for us to actually be able to be pushing things into the stomach. But if it feels good to you at this moment and you want to optimize your immune system and you believe it to be true, then it is. And my mom, since I was a kid, has got me gargling hot salt water, and she tells me even right now every night, gargle your salt water and then spit it out. Don't even swallow it. It's put it the other way.
Yeah.
But this is a great time for us to catch, like every time you're touching your nose, your eyes, or your mouth, like can you limit that? There's a great video of an epidemiologist, MD, who he tapes his shoulders now, especially, sorry, his elbows, shoulders, while he's at work, especially, but when he's going around, and it tightens to the point that he can't touch his face.
That's amazing.
So, but he said it took him noticing that he was doing it like 40, 50 times an hour for him to realize, whoa, I actually need to stop doing this. So now I'm very meticulous on not doing that, just being as intentional and conscious as I can be. So I can't speak to that, but I'd invite everyone to minimize your eyes, nose, and mouth touching for sure. But if you're applying the most important medicine of staying isolated and quarantining yourself, you don't even have to worry about potentially having something that you need to swallow into your stomach.
Now, what does quarantining really mean? I want to touch on that because some people think they're quarantining and they're not. I may have made a mistake by leaving my home with my boyfriend and then coming to my mom's to see my family for a few days. And this may have been a wrong move for me because that means I'm not quarantining 100% and that I could be part of the problem because of the choice that I made. So I'm going to be very vigilant moving forward. So I'm being honest about, where I'm at. And I want to speak to you about what is really quarantining. Is it going to the woods and taking a walk and seeing all kinds of people, seeing your family through a window? What is quarantining for you? What do you think is the best way to quarantine?
Well, that's a great question, and we did talk about this yesterday because our mind tries to find every reason to say, you know what, I'm still honoring the things that they need me to do, when the best thing, like a true quarantine, is you stay in your house and you stay away from people that are possibilities of, even if they're applying what we know is best to be the best practices, we can never confirm it. So you can only, in this instance, be absolutely certain about your own actions. So quarantining is you staying at home. And if you live in a house where you have multiple people coming in, a true quarantine is them honoring the same rules that you guys have done. And then within the quarantine is isolation. And isolation is if someone has the potential for having any of the symptoms, now they're isolating themselves within that space of quarantine. But you can technically honor quarantining and still maintaining your human sanity by going out into nature. But be mindful about in your quarantine, in that you quarantine yourself into the confines of, maybe there's a 6-foot bubble at the very least that exists around me. And the 6 feet is because when people cough or sneeze, you can project it that far. It can even go 9 feet easily. So it's just being mindful of that you have this 6 feet bubble. Imagine that. You have beautiful confines that you can be at the full liberty within your house. And then when you do decide to go to nature, if you do, completely honor that and have others respect that too. It's just, if you're running by someone, I know there's some study that showed that it's very minimal, but someone can run by you and cough and it's just this and it's continue on. So if we're trying to get lax on any of the rules, expect this thing to be lasting longer because other people are trying to be lax on the rules as much too.
Right. Then there's that definitely answers my question, guys. If you have any other questions, please let me know. The other thing I wanted to speak about is that, not everybody has the same values when it comes to this, or the same level of fear. Some are underreacting, some are overreacting. When it comes time to co-parenting, we're trying to move as little as possible. Some parents may believe, no big deal, and other parents are okay. So what would you recommend during this co-parenting period when one is overreacting and the other one is underreacting, and then it's a time of fear right now? What would you say about that? Oh, I think we're lagging a little bit. The connection is a little bit low.
but I would do an honest evaluation, an honest discussion with all the parents that are present to see who's really applying this, quarantining as much as possible, and who is potentially at the highest risk. For example, I'm a high risker. If there's a firefighter or a police officer or someone working in the food industry or someone that is deemed an essential service and they have to be going out as much as possible to honor their job and honor their human duty and role, maybe we should be mindful about limiting the contact that they make. I can let you know that in my hospital, every single doctor is quarantining themselves from their family. They would love to be hugging and kissing and spending time with their partners or their children, but they're seeing something that's a bigger and aside themselves. That I think everyone at home, fortunately, is not seeing the early stages of this even, but there are people who, like, just by coming into exposure, 5 or 6 days, going into the next house where we're being lax, we're just with our family members who we're not going to get sick, they end up getting sick. And grandma or your mom or your dad can suffer the consequences of what was otherwise a very well-intentioned connection that we want to nurture, especially in a time like this. When people are feeling isolated, what do? We step in for one another. But right now we're being asked to stand for one another, but I'm going to stand here and you stand over there. Just know that I'm there in support, and you can learn to actually be your own greatest medicine.
Right. And I spoke to a girlfriend of mine yesterday. Her grandmother's on her dying bed, and they're wondering, do we go and see her? And her logic is, well, she's on her deathbed. Yeah, well, if all of your aunts and cousins and uncles and everybody go and visit them, it's not only her that has the possibility of being, I understand that maybe she's at the last of her lifeline, but what about everybody else who comes encounter with her during that visit? So right. I think we need to be really vigilant in these times and try to make sure that we're not being selfish when it comes time to these things, and maybe just in my opinion would be to go above what you're used to doing, and maybe if you're not used to communicating with your co-parent, this time it's a time to really step up and level up for the goodness of the children and the people who can't speak for themselves, right?
Right. Well, if I could add one thing to that, which is very important, is even in all of this, even though the rules are there, even though we're outside of ourselves, we were on a call 2 days ago with a guy named Aubrey Marcus. Mm-hmm. And I asked him this question specifically because I have to maintain an honor distance. And he said, Kaveh, if you have expressed to someone that you have these concerns that you could potentially infect them, that they could potentially go and infect someone else, they could potentially even kill someone else, he said they can still exercise their own sovereignty and decide, you know what, I accept all of the risks and all of the possibilities, and now I lean in. This isn't something it's just, I think a lot of people do that without realizing how far the downstream effect can be, but that is a possibility that a human being can do, and these are like extenuating circumstances that have to be considered, where you have someone who's passing soon, and this may be one of the last times that we do see them. You can still honor distance. Can the family be so deeply conscious where we all honor distance, or maybe one person goes in the room at a time, stays at a distance, potentially does get grandma sick, but she's aware of it? Because that's speaking to the humanness and giving all of the data available, as opposed to someone just, because right now a lot of adults are having trouble being told, stay away from everyone, don't do everything. And now we're like, hey, I don't want to be told what to do. Right. But it's in the awareness of the why that we start to we're able to exercise greater sovereignty for why we're deciding to do it, as opposed to being told to do it and then not really feeling the why. Right. So that would be the invitation, to just reflect on that.
The why are you doing this? Why are you quarantining? Why are you taking this time? The why is everything all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got a few questions about symptoms. So for example, we've got my mom, of course, she came in from Florida. So just to be safe, we've got her quarantined in a room like a hostage. We've been making her take her temperature, and at one point she got 100.4, but for 10 minutes. And since then she's been fine, no symptoms whatsoever. You know, Tanya's been getting some chest pain in her lungs. Is it anxiety from the dilation of the lungs and stress because of the sympathetic and parasympathetic system? So, you know, fevers and oh, my throat's hurting me. And when do we go to the doctor? When is a symptom too much? How do we know it's time?
So if you have a symptom and it's not debilitating you in the form of shortness of breath, chest pain, true chest pain, that you can't touch, that you can't, doesn't change with the breathing or the positioning of your body, chest pain that you're feeling there, it's really tight, shortness of breath, hallucination, or a profound fatigue that makes absolutely no sense to you, or you have some emergency like you broke a bone or something else like that. If it's not a true emergency, you just have symptoms, you stay home, and now you go from quarantining to true isolation. And you're going to be asked, and you're going to be, the opportunity is for you to be the most important doctor for yourself by nourishing your body the most, listening to your body the most, giving it the best amount of supplements if they are available to you, or at the very least hydrating. And while we're on that topic, there's data that's potentially supporting ibuprofen, Motrin, Aleve, naproxen, which are all non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, as a possibility for you to step away from during this process. And while we're on that topic, melatonin seems to have an antioxidative and anti-inflammatory effect that benefits viral pathogenesis blocking, but it hasn't been tested with COVID specifically. But it's something just to be curious and open about. So stay away from ibuprofen just while the data is not clear. Preferentially go towards Tylenol if you really need it. But I think the greatest fever thing to address is either sleep, because the fever is your body fighting something and it needs the best energy it can, and we are summoned to the bed. We are the only animal on earth that fights sleep. So this is a great opportunity for us to listen to our body, maybe for the first time, because there's no diversions. I was speaking with someone earlier where she's symptomatic and she's been having symptoms, and I asked her, I said, have you ever allowed yourself to be with your sickness with this much presence in your life? Because in the past, when we're sick, we're like, okay, as soon as I'm better, I'm going to get back to work, or I'm going to get back to this. This is the first time where you're not able to get back the same way. And you can actually be with yourself and be with all of yourself. And it really took her back into reflection. And I invite everyone, if you do get symptoms, or even prior to, please take this time for yourself.
It's hard to be when you've never, we're so busy doing that a lot of people have never been taught how to be. So it's a very restless time for them. And I think a lot of times, because of the stress and the anxiety, for me, it's been coming in as waves. I was praying to the porcelain gods for the first 4 days, I guess all of my anxiety was coming out that way. I was having a hard time sleeping. Today I'm feeling much better. So I think the anxiety comes in waves, and a lot of times we believe we're getting symptoms. And I think there's a much bigger thing that's taking place at the same time, aside from the virus. What would you recommend? What are you taking right now as supplements to keep you strong? Because you're faced with this bacteria and this virus every single day. You're putting your life at risk. So you're definitely, I know, loading yourself with mushroom teas and some vitamins. So I would love for you to share with us what you're using.
Well,
my face.
Sure. Well, state of mind is not something that you can necessarily get from the medicines, but I keep thinking about applying intentionality, presence, consciousness, and awareness. And how I do that is by paying myself first and being intentional with my process. The morning is no tech MJD for a reason. I wake up in the morning and I know that the greatest virus that is going to be present to me isn't the virus itself, it's the pathogen within the mind that is taking me into leading thoughts of fear and other things that debilitate me from really having not just a productive day, but being effective and proactive the best I can. Like, I have a night shift tonight. So my mornings is immediately waking up, meditating. I listen to either a chant that I have called Interfaith, and I chant for 20 minutes, and then I'll journal for about, yeah.
I chanted for an hour in my bath, and I turned it into holy water, and it removed my anxiety completely. Chanting is definitely something that helps relieve anxiety.
Yeah, beautiful. And I had 25 people on a call yesterday, and we all roared together. Like, roared so much that my throat was hurting, and I started getting a cough. I'm like, do I have this? Yes. But then I caught it being the symptom. So meditate, journal, and dance. All of these are deeply nourishing, and pay yourself first early on. So I call it No Tech MJD, and I'd invite you guys into that too. But aside from that, there's a physician, his name is Dr. Dan Engle, E-N-G-L-E. he has written up an immune boosting protocol that includes things like vitamin C, vitamin D, selenium. And I sent the list to a friend recently, and he, as a gift, he sent all of them through Amazon to me. So they're actually downstairs. But right now, what I'm taking is 10,000 units of vitamin D3 every day. I'm taking 100 milligrams of zinc. I'm taking 2 pills of 5-HTP, which I forget is how much, and I'm taking 5 milligrams of melatonin a night.
You're also taking the 5-HTP and the melatonin because of the sleep patterns right now that you're having, right?
Yeah, but 5-HTP is like when you take it during the day, it doesn't make you tired. At least for me, it doesn't. I'm just aware of it, but it boosts, it optimizes your serotonin. It's tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin. So it's not, it's hydroxytryptophan, but it's a precursor to that, and it still does optimize your serotonin and puts you in a better state for better sleep, for better mood, for better emotional lability, where you're able to stay calm even though your emotions want to take you there. You can be more of a witnesser as opposed to being in your emotions, which is such an important thing right now, because when we're like, I'm anxious, you're not anxious. It's a part of you that's anxious that you can step back from and witness. And when you do things like journaling regularly, you can talk to that anxiety as opposed to be that anxiety.
There's also CBD that could be used. That definitely helped me with anxiety when I took it in the morning and at night in liquid form. That helped me a lot. I've been following Jay Shetty's daily meditations. They feel like they're 2 minutes, they're 20 minutes. He hits something every day. And there's so many wonderful resources online. Instagram is more beautiful than I've ever seen it before. It's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm just going to hit a couple of questions here. One is, if you've tested positive for COVID, well, the first one is, if I've quarantined for 14 days, am I safe now? I'm scot-free, I'm good, I can do whatever I want and have a party.
Among other colleagues, we're seeing that 27 to 37 days is actually how long you can still be a viral shedder from the day that you have first exposure to it. So a lot of people won't like this, but you should technically be quarantining for another 14 days after your symptoms have completely resolved.
And still stay home after that.
And still stay home, yeah. It's going to be challenging, but also you were nursing a potential sickness, and now you can nurture your humanness. Right. So that's the possibility, and please, let's always try and be part of the solution and catch ourselves. Even hold space for when you're like, I am done with being quarantined. Yeah. Feel through that discomfort, but recognize that I'm doing something that's bigger than myself right now by doing this, and by me holding my ground. And doing this and staying in this discomfort, I let other people in my tribe know the same thing, that they can do this as well. You give permission to your tribe.
That's right. And so yesterday I had a neighbor come through, just, and we've been respecting that distance, and he came a little close, and I backed up some more, and I just kept backing up. And I think that you quarantine the way that you want. And I think it's just really important to kind of respect other people's spaces. If they feel that they want you to stay away, you need to respect that space as well. Don't push, don't try to break somebody's barriers. They're allowed to underreact, and they're allowed to overreact, and we're not allowed to get upset. We just need to make conscious choices within ourselves, for ourselves. So we went through the whole quarantining, if it's safe. The other thing is, what about those people who are working in the pharmacies and the grocery stores? I went to the grocery store. The young girl wasn't wearing a mask. I think I heard today that now, as of today, if you need to go into the stores, you absolutely need a mask or they won't let you in. I had asked the young girl, hey, do you want a sealed mask? She said, no, I'm okay. So it's getting to a point where it's a little bit scary. We get really paranoid going in to get your groceries and you're freaking out. So what do you have to say about those workers? Someone with a brother works in a gas station. What about how do they stay safe when they come back home? They're frontliners too, in one way or another.
Sure. Well, we can only invite people into being practicing the best practices to protect themselves. If you go to the grocery store and you see someone not wearing a mask, this is all the more reason after inviting them for you to be protecting of your own person. So be mindful that if this person has gone and taken care of groceries or produce or anything for that matter, there's a good chance, or possibility, not a good chance, sorry, that she could have coughed or sneezed or rubbed her hand, or someone else could have done it who's another client or potential person that came through, and they have touched this too. So assume everything is potentially contaminated with the virus. When I come home, I do not bring anything from my house home. Before I come in, I have a Lysol in my car that I'll spray myself down. And I know that's not good, but I'll wear my mask until I have sprayed myself fully down and have my eyes closed so nothing is coming into any orifices or on any skin. It just goes on the clothes. When I come in, all the clothes goes directly into the wash, and then the shoes stay outside for about a day. And then when I come in, it's straight into the shower. Your hair, let it run for 2 minutes in heat, in hot water.
You told me to take a shower and a half. That's what you had told me. Take a shower and a half.
A shower and a half. Well, yeah, so be mindful about whatever you have potentially brought out there, you bring back. And people are wearing masks horribly out there for now, with love. If you have a mask on, you're not touching it anymore. You're not moving it for any reason whatsoever until you get home. You make sure that the bridge is really tight against your nose, and the rest of the time it's staying there. You avoid at all expenses to touch your face. One of the great gifts of the mask is for you to come to the awareness of how much you're touching your face, and it at least acts as a barrier, especially when you're in places when the only reason we should really be going out right now is to get necessities, not preferences, necessities. So
not Tostitos and wine.
Well, if that's part of your necessity list, it's still in the grocery store. But please, when you bring these back, we wipe everything down. I take everything straight onto my balcony.
Can you give us the procedure? You spoke to me about what you do with your groceries, how you're shopping in the store, and then when you come in, how you're bringing the food into your home.
Yeah, so I'm not buying any groceries I'm not buying any produce or anything that's not wrapped. The moment I get home, I have a Lysol with wipe ready, and on my balcony I have a box set aside for everything that's plastic or recyclable, goes straight into the recycle. The things that can't, but are, for example, going to go in the freezer, I wipe down, because it shows that it's been seen this coronavirus lives in freezers for up to 2 years.
Oh,
so
what?
Yeah.
Coronavirus lives into freezers for about 2 years. Okay.
Yeah, so we wipe all of that down. Cold doesn't kill these. It doesn't neutralize this virus. It's not really living. It's just it's replicating. So we wipe that down. All the foods that are everything gets a nice 5 to 10 minutes extra. Unfortunately or fortunately, you're more present for your food processing. And I put all of the individual fruits and veggies into containers now. So my fridge is just filled with containers, and there's no wrapping or packaging that's there. So at least I've done my best. It's not that it's completely free. There's some things you can control and some you can't, but I've done my best. Any glove that you did wear, please put them in a garbage as opposed to just throwing them on the ground. There's videos going around the internet of people just being so unintentional, throwing their stuff outside and just continuing on with their lives. Like, guys, this is beyond preserving ourselves. We have an opportunity to see how we haven't been preserving this world. And now let's come to a balance where, like nature doesn't take any more than it needs.
Right.
Animals are one of the few, human beings are one of the species on Earth that takes more than we need to take. Just be okay with exactly how much we need. Can we honor our body for the exact amount of sleep that we need, the exact amount of food that we need? Like, let's be mindful and present for all of our decisions and our experiences moving forward. Because what you do will decide how you're going to have the potential of being sick, about how the healthcare is potentially going to be strained, and how long total this experience is going to be for all of us. Because I think a lot of us want to go back to normal, but like, tune in, there's not a normal we're going back to. This is pre 9/11 flying and post 9/11 flying.
Right.
But we're going to have, but this can be all of the most nurturing things that we've all been hoping for. So I hope that clears up for food.
I can tell you a little bit about how I've been doing my grocery shopping. I've been taking those grocery bags, putting them in the cart, and as I select the items from the shelves, I've been putting them directly in the bag and transferring them from one bag into my next and I've been scanning myself.
Yeah.
Taking the items home, leaving them on the balcony, like you said, letting them take some air. I've been removing everything out of their boxes, throwing them in the garbage outside, leaving the garbage outside, and Lysoling everything before I bring it into the home. Oh, we did.
Amazing. That's great.
Well, we're learning now. We didn't do that at the beginning. We're learning now. When it comes to fruits, vegetables, because some people are buying, I obviously would imagine that if you're going to buy fresh produce, you're going to say buy it bagged. If you don't, are you coming home to wash it with soap and water?
Well, I'm only buying things that the fruit exists on the inside, and then the rest is staying on the outside or not coming home with me at all. So oranges are good to come. Avocados are great to come. because you can wash the outside and then you can still have the fruit that's completely unexposed to anything on the inside. And one thing would probably be minimize the amount of nutritional lists that you're looking at. You probably know the things that you are going to reach for. Maybe it's not the time to be looking for new things that you're going to be touching 700 of them. Look at what you want to have and minimize the total amount of touches. And what I'm doing also is I'm grabbing fruits from behind, or containers or whatever it is from behind, as opposed to from the front, and getting a lot of shelf stable things. I got my entire desk area now is just bone broth, coffee from Station Cold Brew, which is like delicious coffee that you can just have in a can, because I've seen cases that, I don't know if Tim Hortons is speaking about it or not, but there are cases of positive people at the coffee places, and there's actually at in food processing places, we're starting to see people being positive as well. So we need to just be mindful about how no one is immune to this, and our systems can be stifled. So have things that are shelf stable available to you right now.
The other thing I was going to ask you too is that I have a girlfriend of mine who they're still operating and working. She's head of HR, and she told me that she implemented really serious rules on what needs to be done. And she said people are still eating 4 feet away from each other. How can I instill fear in them? I said, maybe it's not instilling fear. She goes, I don't want to instill fear, but how can I force them or encourage them to respect the rules, because people within the business that's still open are getting contaminated? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, the truth is we're honoring 6 feet, but again, it's coughing and sneezing, right? The true distance that we should be honoring from one another is 1 meter. Outside of that, like from a physical proximity standpoint, but 6 feet is clean and clear, because my hand is about 3 feet, average human arm is 3 feet, and their average arm is 3 feet. And if we were to swing and hit, there's a possibility of that. But 6 feet is a good marker for us to be doing. And these people who are refusing it, their denial probably transfers to other things as well too, where they're like, oh, it's not that real. Because if they knew it, and unfortunately they will probably start applying it as soon as they have a self-interest that's associated with it. The moment they have a family member or a friend, it suddenly becomes real. This is what I have been speaking about for the past 2 weeks, and I'm seeing in the city of Toronto at least, that suddenly it became real for people when they found out that it was the case. And it's usually like when it was too late, when people went to a party still and now 5 of them are sick at once with the same thing and 3 of them have tested positive. Oh, maybe shouldn't have gone out on St. Patrick's Day because of I didn't want to be alone, and maybe it is more real. And we're seeing like 30-year-olds with no past medical history who are intubated right now. Like it's unheard of. So this is not like leaving anyone unaffected. It seems to be that childhood asthma is one of the leading symptoms that is in every patient, like the majority of patients, as some underlying lung disease, obesity, and cardiovascular disease have seemed to me the 3 most important ones that I've noticed for people. So especially asthma, and how many people, especially in North America, identify with being asthmatic? All the more reason for you to be applying it.
I'm a little scared. As I told you, I have a bronchitis right now, so I'm being super careful. I'm a little bit scared, but I'm trying to keep the mind strong for sure. Someone asked here about the grocery bags. Better to just use plastic grocery bags, just to not bring yours to cross-contaminate, I imagine would be safer, right?
Yeah, and plastic bags throw out right after. I know that this is not being good with the environment right now, but let's preserve ourselves, and then we'll resolve that after. But I'm being mindful, like plastic and metal, it's living on for up to 96 hours. So
that's what I wanted to know. So plastic and metal, 96 hours. Cardboard and paper.
Cardboard and paper is like 4 to 9.
Okay. So
yeah, and that's temperature dependent. So please be mindful of that.
Right. Okay, great. So you had mentioned that it's possible, also I just want to repeat that it's possible for the bacteria to stay alive in the freezer for up to 2 years as well.
Virus. It's not a bacteria. Yeah, bacteria are living, viruses aren't. And this virus, SARS and MERS, lived in freezers for 2 years. So that's
we need to clean everything.
Yeah, but it's very sensitive to it's very sensitive to normal soaps. All of the Lysols, the Cloroxes that you want to use for disinfecting your place, but just regular soap. You don't need to be getting these heavy-duty antibacterial. You don't need to be CLRing your hands. You can be just using regular soap and thoroughly. Like when we go into surgical procedures, we're washing at least up until here, but at the very least for yourself, have a cutoff of there, minimize jewelry at this time. When I go to the ER, I'm not wearing any of these. I'm as minimal as possible, and that's why I cut my hair and shave my beard so the mask can fit me properly. And I don't even have a meal while I'm there anymore. So I'm minimizing my exposures, and I'd invite you guys to minimize yours when you are out there.
Perfect, perfect. I noticed that the numbers in Quebec are much higher.
Yeah.
Do you know why it could be? Because I believe they're going up, and we're highest in all of Canada.
Yeah, well, I think that not I think, but what the data shows is that Canada is not following the same rules on how they're saying that it's positive, that a case is confirmed. We have presumptive and then confirmed. And Quebec is the only one that is including presumptive as positive, like confirmed.
Okay.
So it's being effective in bringing the reality of the number to people sooner. So they take action sooner, because as much as we don't want to be led by fear, the majority of people will only take action when they are in fear. So whereas Ontario, British Columbia, all the other provinces are having a presumptive case, then it takes about 4 or 5 days for it to go to Winnipeg, where they have one center that repeats the test and then confirms it. So it's like, why delay the news? Why delay this when we're all in this together? Like, one thing that I'd love to say is Germany right now is taking patients from France. It's taking patients from Italy. Germany is beautifully showing up for the world, showing us that in these moments where we have this thing that it affects everyone possibly and no one is immune, we dissolve the borders that exist within our minds and politics, and allows us to come together to show up for the human and one another. And it's not my politics versus yours. Whereas in contrast, right now, the United States today, Cuba has this amazing they have an amazing medical system. And since this embargo from the 1959 or whatever, they still do not get like easy passage into things. And they have offered their services to the world right now and they have a medicine called interferon alpha, which has been China used for 1,500 of their patients to help them with like critical respiratory disease. And the US today is asking countries to refuse the support from Cuba during this time.
I'm glad to be Canadian.
Right. Let's get rid of the borders right now. The mindset of separation is done. We are human beings here to play together, to be together, to coexist together with human beings first, but also the rest of the world. And I hope that we start instilling this, like everyone here has an opportunity to start putting their efforts and time towards something that's bigger than themselves, for us to bring back global collaboration with one another. And I would really love for us to start ruminating on this right now. I know there's a lot of questions in this message.
There are a lot of questions. So let's just kind of get to, we'll get to these. We still have another 23 minutes before they cut us off.
Someone said, "Hey, beautiful." They must be talking to me. Hi. I'm joking.
Oh, I love you, Kaveh. All right.
Hi, Dr. Love.
Hello.
So someone asked who the source is. We're going to go through this again. Dr. Kaveh Kavoosi is a frontline ER doctor who's been dealing with this firsthand and giving us some advice on how to be part of the solution. Somebody asked if you've been contaminated, if you've caught corona before and you're fine, do you risk catching it again, and are you still contagious? When are you scot-free?
I would ask that person if they've gone to be confirmed coronavirus positive, as opposed to just having symptoms that they felt were coronavirus, because those are very different things. Because you may not be getting reinfected, you may be getting infected for the first time. Oh. So everyone should be operating like they have it right now, that they're 80 years old and that they have 3 comorbidities, and you will die.
Repeat that again? That's really important.
As just as a practice for you to see, how would I be doing anything differently in my actions right now versus how I am doing it, is if I were an 80-year-old with like lung disease and I still want to live and I have 3 other conditions and maybe I've had a heart attack before, how would I be exploring this quarantine and isolation any differently? Because if I applied those techniques, they're probably a little different than mine, and that would be the most optimal way for you to not be a contributor to the issue and to minimize you ever getting it in the first place. There's also 2 things. This person asked about the source. There are multiple sources online where you're seeing the most up-to-date studies coming out from China, from Italy, from Spain, and meta-analysis, which is people who are putting all the data from all that's available together daily and I can maybe share that with Chrissy to share with her friends after.
I
But
would love that.
one place to look is Data is Beautiful on Reddit, reddit.com/r/data is beautiful, and they are really good at putting up-to-date data showing incidences of cases, number of mortality, and then one of the most important things for us to be watching is not the number of new cases. It's the number of time it takes for the rate of death to double. And if we are below 3 days for death doubling, we are already doing our part of socially isolating ourselves well enough and distancing ourselves for us to mitigate and flatten this curve. And right now it looks like Canada is more on par with South Korea than we are with Italy with the measures that we're taking. So like I applaud everyone,
Yay.
but let's keep going with
Everybody,
it, okay?
yeah, that's amazing. Good. I'm very happy to hear that. To confirm again, Dr. Kaveh had said, you know, maybe we should stay away from ibuprofen and Advil and stick to Tylenol. Someone asked, what about aspirin?
Aspirin has not shown to be so it's a completely different pathway.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
We've
And
got,
if you
said
take
it's
aspirin
fine.
for your heart or a stroke or any other blood conditions, continue to take your aspirin, please.
Perfect. What about somebody like us who is taking care of, I have that question, taking care of someone who's in confinement, just to be precautious, no symptoms whatsoever. Should we be bringing the covered plate to someone living in close proximity as long as there's a 2-meter distance?
Yeah, and yes, and one person should be the designated person going and coming and being mindful about cleaning, washing their hands once they're doing that. Anything that it should be a team effort where the person who's in there is minimizing the things that they touch. They let you know when you go grab it that I touched this, I touched this, I
Yes.
had to use this, my mouth was on this, and then it goes straight into either the washing machine or you just wash it run it under hot water. Like I would maybe, for my sake, have boiling water ready if I have someone who's in isolation, and right when they come out, all of the items that they had used, outside of me really washing my hands meticulously, is I'd pour hot water on all of it. Don't pour hot water on your hands, but pour hot water on.
We've completely confined her in a separate space, but not everybody has that luxury to have 2 bathrooms and do that. So for those of you who don't have that luxury, just stay clean.
Does she have a window?
She has her window. She has her window. And she
Give her
has
some air, yeah.
She's
All right.
opening the door. We've also invited her to like take a little stroll in the backyard. She's not symptomatic. We're just being careful because
Right.
then she went.
Well, symptomatic, you can be asymptomatic and still positive, and then someone else expressed the symptoms when they were exposed to an asymptomatic person. So
we're just being
we don't.
cautious. We're being proactive and not reactive.
Right.
And so that's how we're doing. So someone here is writing, my paranoia family is convinced that the virus is in the air. Is it safe to be outdoors? We spoke about this before.
Airborne.
Yeah, you are safe to be outdoors, especially in places of good air dispersion. Maintain your distance from people, but go be with nature. Nature could be probably the greatest medicine for the people who are feeling paranoia. Go hug a tree and tell me that tree doesn't love you.
Yes. So my thing.
What about
we have a question here about N95 masks. I had gone to my doctor who told me that he was custom fitted for his N95 mask. Don't bother going to spend money on it because there's a kind of gas that's released to make sure that the mask is properly sealed. And we don't have any of those things. So what is your opinion on the N95 mask?
Well, N95 masks are in big scarcity right now. But I understand why people would want to protect themselves to the best of their capacity if they're feeling scared of this, and there's the notion that this could be airborne. But if you are applying the rule of quarantine and isolation, you don't need a mask because you're at home.
Right.
So if you are able, I've said this on every video I've gone to, if you are applying all of these and you save just a few for when you're, for example, going to the grocery store or somewhere that requires necessity, like gas stations, please be mindful when you're at gas stations, when you touch that handle, you're Lysoling your hand or just completely washing it after fully before you come back in your car. Because if you touch your steering wheel and then you touch your gear shift, now you've dispersed whatever could be there. So when I'm being mindful, but for my car, I have a Lysol spray thing in there too, that when I come in, I'm spraying my hands a little bit. I know that's not in best interest, but my health here, as opposed to this, is and it's going to be temporary, is the best practice to be applying. So I would just be going with that route.
What about for those who don't have masks and don't have access to masks? What would you recommend?
Don't seek masks if you are concerned for that right now. Like maybe you can start using a delivery service in the meantime where you can continue to not need a mask, and maybe you like ask yourself what you need the mask for. That's the most important question. If you can come across one N95 or one regular mask, okay, you found it now, but please like don't go searching for it and lose your mind about why I don't have a mask, because that's when you're feeding the beast. That's when you're feeding the fear. You can control what you can and surrender to the rest.
And the beast is really, like you said, between your two ears and your mind, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's a real beast as well. I'm not going to take away from what's really happening.
Right.
We have here another question. How long does the virus live on clothing, considering any potential transfer at the grocery store, car, home space, etc.?
Good. So none of the studies that I have seen so far have spoken to cotton or any of the materials that we have, but the more plasticky, like polyester it is, the longer that it'll last. So, and lycra, stuff like this. So throw those into the wash immediately. Like right when things come home, when you've been out in your exposure possibilities, you have nothing to lose by putting it in the wash right away. And if we're completely wrong on this, so be it. At least you had warm clothes, and wash on warm, by the way. But at worst, we were just over meticulous. It's just when people go from being from just being meticulous to being OCD, that's when it becomes a challenge, because again, it puts a weight and a stress on their lives. Our quality of life is the best opportunity for us to see how we are actually operating, because right now, how you're feeling and experiencing life is an accentuation of how you normally carry yourself.
That's
right.
So
if your baseline is a little bit of fear and now you're very fearful, you were probably fearful in the first place, and now you have a great opportunity to see and spend time with that. Like, go and find a therapist online that you can work with and you feel support with, where you can get to know yourself. There's no better time than now. You have the least amount of diversions available to you. So time is your greatest medicine, and your intention to be present for yourself is your greatest ally.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely.
What do
you have anything to say about these self-tests that we're told to be doing in the mornings? How do you feel about that?
How accurate are they?
Or how accurate are they?
Who has self-tests? Are you talking about actual swabs? Are you talking about
holding your breath
for 10 seconds?
Yeah.
I've seen there's people with really good lung capacities who are able to do that, but that is probably a nice indicator. In truth, I have a thermometer and I have a pulse oximeter, and I, for myself, because I'm exposed to people who are positive or who are very high probability, I've been journaling every day. So if there's a little shift in it, I can look back 5 or 6 days to the possibilities of who I'm exposed to. And this is maybe being over diligent, but I'm being mindful about listing down names of who I was exposed to during the day, for me to be mindful about, in retrospect, if I have to let people know about a possibility that I got sick, check in on them and let them know. It's almost like when someone gets positive with chlamydia and they're like, call your partners from the last 6 months. Yeah. And you're like, shit, this is going to be a hard conversation.
You got to have it. Right.
No, I'm joking. I haven't.
No, but you have entered through the mouth. How long does it take to travel to the lungs?
It can be immediate, or it doesn't get there. Some immune systems, if the viral titer is so low, our immune system mobilizes itself in a way that it doesn't even have an opportunity for us to get it out. Like, imagine it's just on the tip and you spit it out. There's a possibility. It's just there's a great article that the Intelligencer put out that showed, like, in a spot of spit where you can't even see, there was like 10,000 of these viruses. In 1 teaspoon, there's 3/4 of a trillion viruses that it can fit into 3/4 of a teaspoon. So all of the efforts that we're talking about to, like, get this out of your mouth and all that, they're pretty futile. Limit your exposure in the first place. We're trying to find excuses to, like, not try and find excuses, but
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
That's great, but let's be mindful about minimizing the network, period. Keep your hands out of your mouth, keep your hands away from your face, keep yourself in a protected area so you're not part of the network connection, and now you have mitigated it down to next to 0. And please have everyone who's entering and leaving your house to honor the same thing as well as you. I think we've got, like, are there more questions down here?
Yeah, I think I have one more question here. I think we've got 12 minutes before we get cut, or 11 minutes before we get cut. If a person doesn't have symptoms and is tested positive, isolating in their house, how does the virus go away?
Our immune system treats it, resolves it, and then completely expels it. But what they're seeing is it's expelled through degradation. Our body has a great capacity for breaking it down into inert substances, but also then we expel it through our respiration in microdoses or through our stool. But again, let's try and not have it in the first place. And if you do, you do the best you can to isolate yourself, quarantine yourself, and the only reason you ever leave during this time, which can be very challenging, but we have isolation where we're spoiled. We can look at this rectangle anytime we want. We can journal, we can sleep, we can do all the stuff in the confines of our own bed. It'll be 2 weeks of that, and then possibly let's add 2 weeks on top of that after.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Sean here saying that your time is the greatest medicine we can ask for. So thank you for your time and your love and everything that you've been giving to us here. I know that you have, you're appeasing a lot of people's fears, which is great because we've been reading and hearing so many things everywhere. So it's nice to hear from someone who is on the front line. We're going to go with just 2 more questions, and I want to let Kaveh finish this in whichever way he pleases to, because he's been so generous with our time. And if you guys have a lot of questions, then maybe we'll come back another time next week, and we'll do a follow-up with this. Who knows? So the last question I have here is about heat, and someone here says, I live in Playa del Carmen. By the way, we have people tuning in from all over the world.
Awesome.
I live in Playa del Carmen. What about hot weathers? Can you talk about this, spreading symptoms and such?
Well, the heat didn't have anything to do with other coronaviruses like MERS. Like Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome was being transferred, and still to an extent is transferred at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So temperature is not necessarily the factor here. What is more so the factor is the fact that when you are in colder temperatures, you have a greater tendency to have more salivary buildup, more nasal discharge, and we're touching our faces more, and we're bundling ourselves up, and we're more secretory. And when we're doing that, we're exposing ourselves to the possibility of being touched more. Our respiration rate changes. But there was one study that came out of China so far that shows that they were exposing coronavirus to heat, and it was mitigating it was helping in optimizing your immune system. I'm still applying it in the shower. I'm doing deep intentional breaths with warm to get the vapors into my nose. When I make my mushroom elixir tea, for the first 2-3 minutes, I'm breathing through my nasal passages, but I'm more so optimizing myself and being intentional with my breath. If you get sick, and what ends up happening is your lungs go into respiratory distress, it's not that they are not able to work, it's that they're not able to expand anymore and transfer the oxygen because so many of the secretions are filling up what's called the alveoli. So what you can do is, if you've heard of Wim Hof breathing is a name that we've given to incentive spirometry. Incentive spirometry is you intentionally breathing and optimizing the capacity of your lungs for you to get big surface area in your lungs, close off, blow off CO2, and you're really optimizing it over and over again. So if you can apply this like 5-6 times a day, that can be one of the most nourishing things for you to be applying. Breath work is amazing for an illness that can potentially affect your breath, especially people who have that capacity. You're optimizing your lung capacity, because right now when we're breathing, if we have a lung that's like this, most of our breathing happens like here. But when we're doing incentive spirometry, we're going all the way here and all the way here, all the way here, all the way here. Now we're optimizing the capacity of our lungs, letting it to get full nourishment, no laziness, because our lungs are as lazy as we are. So if we override it, we're going to be able to optimize our lungs. And I have a friend yesterday who I was on a call with, he's a nurse in New York, and has fever and dry cough, and he's off of work. And he's like, I have to accept my death. I'm like, whoa, this is like serious that he's thinking this way immediately. But I'm like, so let's still speak about what we can do to optimize your symptoms right now. And it was, the specific one was incentive spirometry that we were talking about, and then the state of mind. So yeah, and someone here, Sean Inks, he asked, he said, is the main symptom fever or regular cough? If I have a regular cough, am I at risk? The reason for why you have a regular cough is what I would be curious about. If you're a smoker, or if you have if you haven't changed your filters in your house, and that makes you more at risk of that, you have more secretions coming up, more this, more touch, you have an increased risk. But the things that we're seeing is fevers in people that come to the hospital in about 66%, dry cough in 44 to 60%, and then shortness of breath in 20 to 40%. And it can be mild shortness of breath, but then the severe shortness of breath is in the rarer cases.
Okay. Wonderful.
I want to just acknowledge Brandon, who is a brother of mine, who spoke about co-parenting, how tough it can be right now. Like, this is a big dynamic shift.
Yeah, this is real.
Maybe you can invite, like, holding space for people who are co-parenting right now to come into a discussion together, and then we all, like, see what's the best practice. Like, who are we trying to protect here? Are we trying to protect our children or us or family members? There's a big discussion to be had there.
Right there, I did want to mention there are a few topics that I want to discuss in this coming week. I wanted to start with you so that we can appease people's concerns and fears in regards to the health risks. I also wanted to, I'm going to get online this week with Pamela from Elevate to Celebrate to talk about mental health and staying straight at this point. I'm going to be speaking to Yanni Baby about how to stay sober during this time, because a lot of people, I've been going to AA meetings online and people are having a really hard time. So I want to be able to give resources to these people. We'll be doing a live also. You've inspired me now. Please invite your friend Brandon to join me. To parents who are dealing with co-parenting or anyone who's dealing with family members that are not on the same page, we need to have these conversations. I also want to discuss anyone who's dealing with domestic abuse, because right now stress is really high. So domestic abuse is crazy high in the homes right now. How to stay safe during this time. And then for the children who used to go to school because that was their safe space and they no longer have a safe space. So as a community, I feel like there's such a beautiful thing taking place. We've been speaking about all the negativity and fear. I have never in my life felt so supported by a community of strangers that I don't know. I wake up every morning seeing these amazing things, crying every day from joy and peace and love. And I just feel like I feel like I'm so blessed to be living in this time, to be experiencing such beauty and love and community.
So beautifully said there. So beautifully said, because it's illuminating a lot of our aspects of humanness that we had put on the back burner in the name of productivity, doing, success. It came often at the expense of these things that are fundamentally endowed to us, but then we don't really allow ourselves the time to really nurture and bask in. And now we have the opportunity. And it's just an opportunity, though. It's, will we take it or not? Because while you mentioned about alcohol, I'd love to mention that anyone who's using CBD even, or weed, or any other substance, if you're doing it to get away from a fear, you're ultimately doing a disservice for yourself as well, too. So even though marijuana it cures cancer, like whatever's been publicized, at its core, it's how you're doing it and your intention for the why. If you're trying to get away from any discomfort, you're using it no differently than people who drink alcohol do. It's just alcohol has a stigmatism that's associated with it that we have put down. Whereas if we say like a CBDist or something like that, if we start putting a term that's like, wow, this person is so weak that they need to use CBD to get away from their symptoms, then we're maybe going to start bringing a little bit more attention to it. So I just invite that possibility for people to reflect on that too. Your why for the substance.
For myself, I'm a pot smoker and I have stopped smoking. Especially in these past 5 days, I've decided to stop smoking, and this triggered it. I wanted to be fully present. I wanted to feel my emotions, my fears. I wanted to really be present in this time, and I didn't want to use that crutch, and just to be able to benefit from this moment as much as possible. I'm sharper, I'm more focused, I'm less fearful. I feel like there's this whole new energy that's come since. And so I encourage anybody who's using any type of substance. I said alcohol before, but really we're going to be covering any type of substance. Stay clean, stay sober, be present as much as you can. And if you don't have tools and you're afraid, reach out